The moon was quiet. Too quiet. Ji-ho tightened his grip on the scanner in his hand and glanced at the horizon. The gray rocks stretched endlessly, broken only by jagged cliffs and deep craters. He had been scavenging for days now, searching for anything valuable that could help his crew back on the ship. Resources were running low, and every minute wasted meant one step closer to disaster. Ji-ho sighed and adjusted the straps of his backpack. His suit was old, patched up with duct tape in more places than he cared to count. But it still worked. For now, he tapped the side of his helmet, checking the oxygen levels. Enough to last another 6 hours if he didn't push himself too hard. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. It wasn't unusual to feel uneasy out here. This place was lifeless, barren. But today, the silence felt heavier, almost oppressive. He moved carefully over the uneven terrain, scanning the ground for anything useful. Broken pieces of metal, shards of glass-like material, and strange crystals littered the surface. Most of it was junk, useless debris left behind by whoever or whatever had once visited this moon. But sometimes, there were treasures hidden among the trash, rare minerals or forgotten tech that could fetch a good price or keep his people alive just a little longer. Suddenly, his scanner beeped softly. Ji-ho stopped and looked down at the device in his hand. A faint signal pulsed on the screen, marking a spot not far ahead. His heart skipped a beat. This could be it, the find he'd been hoping for. Maybe food rations, maybe fuel cells, maybe even medical supplies. Whatever it was worth investigating. Ji-ho quickened his pace, climbing over a pile of rocks until he reached a shallow crater. At first glance, it seemed empty, but then he noticed something glinting in the dim light. He crouched down and brushed away the dust covering the object. It wasn't what he expected. Instead of a crate or container, he found a body. At least, he thought it was a body. It was humanoid in shape, but its skin shimmered like liquid silver under the weak sunlight. Long, delicate limbs lay sprawled across the ground, and translucent wings folded neatly against its back caught the light like stained glass. Its face was serene, almost angelic, but Ji-ho knew better than to assume it was harmless. Aliens were unpredictable, and many of them were dangerous. He hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. The creature didn't move, and its chest rose and fell so slowly that it was barely noticeable. Was it alive? If it was hurt. Dark streaks marred its silvery skin, and a sharp piece of metal protruded from its side. Blood or something like it oozed out in slow, sluggish drops, pooling on the ground beneath it. Ji-ho swallowed hard. He should leave. Helping an alien, especially one as strange as this, was risky. What if it woke up and attacked him? What if it belonged to some hostile species that would hunt him down later? But something about the way it lay there, vulnerable and alone, made him pause. He couldn't just walk away. "Okay," he muttered to himself, setting his backpack down. "You're either really brave or really stupid. Probably both." He rummaged through his bag until he found the medkit. It wasn't much, just a few bandages, antiseptic wipes, and a small vial of universal healing gel, but it might be enough to stabilize the creature until he figured out what to do next. Slowly, carefully, he approached it, keeping his movements deliberate and non-threatening. When he knelt beside the alien, he realized how big it was. Even lying down, it dwarfed him. Its long legs stretching past his waist. Its wings twitched slightly as he leaned closer, and he froze, waiting to see if it would react. When nothing happened, he took a deep breath and reached out. The moment his gloved hand touched its skin, a jolt of electricity shot through him. He jerked back, startled, and stared at the alien. Its eyes fluttered open, revealing irises that glowed like molten gold. For a second, they locked onto his, and Ji-ho felt as though he were falling into them, drowning in their depth and intensity. Then the alien spoke, its voice soft and melodic, yet laced with pain. Jiho blinked, unsure whether he'd imagined the words. "I'm Jiho," he said, finally, his voice trembling. "I'm here to help." The alien studied him for a long moment before closing its eyes again. "Help," it murmured, almost to itself. "No one helps me," Jiho frowned. Was it delirious? Or did it truly believe no one would come to its aid? Either way, he couldn't abandon it now. He opened the medkit and prepared to remove the shard of metal embedded in its side. As he worked, he tried to ignore the growing sense of unease gnawing at the edges of his mind. This creature was unlike anything he'd ever seen, and helping it could change everything for better or worse. Little did Jiho know, this single act of kindness would set off a chain of events that would alter not only his life, but the fate of two worlds. Jiho worked quickly, his hands steady despite the unease twisting in his stomach. The alien's wound was worse than he had first thought. The shard of metal had pierced deep into its side, and the silvery blood continued to seep out, pooling on the rocky ground beneath it. He knew he didn't have much time. If he didn't stop the bleeding soon, the creature might not survive. He pulled a pair of pliers from his medkit and leaned closer. "This is going to hurt," he said softly, glancing at the alien's face. Its eyes were closed again, but its breathing was shallow and uneven. Whether it could hear him or not, Jiho wasn't sure. Still, he felt the need to explain what he was doing, as if it would somehow make things better. With a deep breath, he gripped the shard of metal and began to pull. The alien's body tensed immediately, and a low, guttural sound escaped its lips. Jiho winced but kept going, his focus sharp. Slowly, inch by inch, he eased the shard out until it came free with a soft squelch. He dropped it onto the ground beside him and grabbed a clean cloth from his kit, pressing it firmly against the wound. The alien let out a sharp gasp, its golden eyes snapping open. For a moment, it stared at Jiho, its expression unreadable. Then, without warning, it reached up with one long, slender arm and grabbed his wrist. Jiho froze, his heart pounding in his chest. The grip wasn't painful, but it was firm enough to make it clear that the alien wasn't letting go anytime soon. "You," it whispered. Its voice softer than before, but laced with an intensity that sent chills down Jiho's spine. "You are human." Jiho nodded slowly, unsure of what to say. "Yes," he replied. "I'm trying to help you." The alien's gaze lingered on him for a few more seconds before it finally released his wrist. It relaxed slightly, though its eyes remained fixed on him. Jiho took that as a sign to continue. He applied the healing gel to the wound, smoothing it over the torn flesh with gentle motions. As he worked, he noticed something strange, a faint glow emanating from beneath the alien's skin. It pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. "What is that?" he asked, pointing to the glowing spot. The alien glanced down at itself, and then back at Jiho. "It is my mark," it said simply. "A sacred symbol of my bond." Jiho frowned. "Bond? What kind of bond?" The alien hesitated, as if debating whether or not to answer. Finally, it spoke. "It is a mark given to me by my consort. Only they may touch it." Jiho's hand froze mid-motion. "Wait. Does that mean—" Before he could finish, the alien's body stiffened again. This time, it wasn't from pain. Its eyes widened, and its lips parted slightly. You touched it," it said, its voice barely above a whisper. "Only my consort may touch me there." Jiho felt his stomach drop. He hadn't meant to do anything wrong, he'd only been trying to help, but now he realized he had crossed some invisible line. His mind raced as he tried to think of what to say. "I didn't know," he stammered. "I swear, I didn't mean to." The alien raised a hand, cutting him off. "Silence," it said, though its tone wasn't angry. It sounded conflicted. You are human. You cannot possibly understand the significance of what you have done. Jiho swallowed hard. The alien studied him for a long moment, its glowing eyes searching his face. Finally, it sighed and looked away. Among my people. The mark is sacred. It signifies a bond deeper than words can express. To touch it without permission is forbidden. To do so knowingly is punishable by death. Jiho's heart sank. But I didn't know, he repeated. I swear, I had no idea. I believe you, the alien said quietly. But others will not be so forgiving. Jiho opened his mouth to respond. But before he could speak, the alien's expression changed. Its eyes narrowed slightly, and its wings twitched. They are coming, it said, its voice tight with urgency. Who's coming? Jiho asked, looking around nervously. The barren landscape was still empty, but he couldn't shake the feeling that danger was closing in. My guards, the alien replied. They will have sensed my distress and traced my location. They will arrive soon. Jiho's mind raced. If the alien's guards found him here, helping their queen or whatever she was, they might not take kindly to his presence, especially after what he had just done. What should I do? He asked, his voice trembling. The alien hesitated, its gaze flickering between him and the horizon. Leave, it said finally. Go now, while you still can. Jiho shook his head. I can't just leave you here. You're still hurt. When created every three. When the alien's expression softened slightly, though its eyes remained serious. Your bravery is admirable, human, but your survival is more important. Go. I will deal with my guards. Jiho wanted to argue, but he knew the alien was right. Staying would only put him in greater danger. Reluctantly, he gathered his tools and stood up. The alien nodded. I will manage. Thank you for what you have done. Jiho hesitated, then turned and started walking away. He didn't get far before he heard the sound of engines in the distance. Looking back, he saw several sleek ships descending from the sky, their metallic surfaces gleaming in the dim light. He quickened his pace, disappearing behind a ridge just as the ships landed. From his hiding spot, Jiho watched as a group of armored figures emerged from the ships and surrounded the alien. They spoke in a language he didn't understand, their voices sharp and commanding. The alien responded calmly, though its tone carried an unmistakable authority. Whatever it was saying seemed to pacify the guards, because they didn't attack or restrain it. Jiho stayed hidden until the ships lifted off again, carrying the alien with them. Only when the sound of their engines faded into the distance did he allow himself to breathe a sigh of relief. He had done what he could, but he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't the end. Something about the alien's words, the way she had looked at him, told him that their paths would cross again. And when they did, he knew it wouldn't be under ordinary circumstances. Jiho sat alone in his small, dimly lit cabin aboard the ship. The walls were covered with tools, maps, and scraps of metal salvaged from past missions. It was a mess, but it felt like home, or as close to home as he could get these days. His hands rested on the table in front of him, still trembling slightly from what had happened on the moon. He couldn't stop thinking about the alien, her glowing mark, and the words she had spoken. Only my consort may touch me there. The phrase echoed in his mind, over and over again. What did it mean? And why had she let him go so easily? Jiho wasn't sure if he should feel relieved or worried. Something about the situation didn't sit right with him. He had done nothing wrong well. Nothing intentional, but he knew that wouldn't matter to others. Laws were laws, especially among aliens. If they found out what he had done, there would be consequences. Big ones. He sighed and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. The rest of the crew was asleep, their snores faintly audible through the thin walls. Jiho envied them. Sleep sounded nice right now, but every time he closed his eyes, all he saw was the alien's face, the way her golden eyes had locked onto his, filled with both pain and something else he couldn't quite name. Gratitude, confusion, or maybe curiosity. A sudden noise snapped him out of his thoughts. It was soft, a faint hum, but it was enough to make him sit up straight. At first, he thought it might be the ship's systems adjusting, but the sound grew louder, more insistent. It wasn't coming from inside the ship. It was outside. Jiho grabbed a flashlight and hurried to the airlock. When he opened the hatch, he froze. Hovering just beyond the ship was a sleek, silver vessel, unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its surface shimmered like liquid metal, and its shape was smooth and organic, almost like it was alive. Jiho's heart raced as he realized who it belonged to. Or rather, who it probably belonged to. Before he could retreat back inside, a beam of light shot out from the alien ship, enveloping him in its glow. He tried to move, to shout, but his body wouldn't respond. The next thing he knew, he was standing in a completely different place. It looked like the inside of the alien ship. Though inside wasn't quite the right word. The space around him seemed endless, with walls that shifted and changed as if they were made of smoke. Strange symbols floated in the air, glowing faintly before disappearing. Jiho blinked, trying to make sense of where he was, or even if he was awake. "You are here," a familiar voice said. Jiho turned and saw her, the alien queen. She stood tall and regal, her silvery skin gleaming under the soft light. Her wings were folded neatly against her back, and her golden eyes watched him with an intensity that made his stomach churn. She looked healthier than the last time he had seen her, though the memory of her injury lingered in his mind. "What is this?" Jiho asked, his voice shaking. "Where am I?" "You are aboard my vessel," she replied calmly. "I brought you here." "Why?" Jiho demanded, taking a step back. "I thought you told me to leave." "I did," she said simply. "But your actions have placed you in a unique position, one that cannot be ignored." Jiho frowned. "What do you mean?" The alien took a step closer, her movements graceful and deliberate. "You touched my sacred mark. Among my people, such an act carries great significance. It is not something that can be undone." Jiho's throat went dry. "I already told you I didn't know. I was just trying to help." "I know," she said softly. "And yet, the fact remains. You touched me. In doing so, you have unknowingly bound yourself to me." Jiho stared at her, his mind struggling to process her words. "Bound myself? What does that even mean?" "It means," she continued, "that according to our laws, you are now considered my consort." Jiho's jaw dropped. "Wait, what? No, that's impossible. I can't be." "It is not a choice," she interrupted. "It is a consequence of your actions. Whether you intended it or not, you have become part of my world. My people will see it as a sign, a bond forged by fate." Jiho shook his head, panic rising in his chest. "This is insane. I'm just a human. I don't belong here. I don't belong with you." The alien tilted her head, studying him with an unreadable expression. "You underestimate yourself, Jiho. You saved my life when no one else would. That act alone speaks volumes about your character." "But I didn't mean for any of this to happen," Jiho exclaimed. "I didn't ask for this. I don't want it." Her gaze softened slightly. "Life rarely gives us what we want, but it often gives us what we need." Jiho opened his mouth to argue, but no words came out. He didn't know how to fight this. How could he? This wasn't his world, and these weren't his rules. Everything about this situation was beyond his control. "What happens now?" he asked finally, his voice barely above a whisper. The alien paused, as if considering her answer. "Now, you must come with me." You will face judgment before my council. They will decide your fate and mine. Your fate? Jiho repeated, confused. What do you mean? She hesitated, her expression darkening slightly. My people value tradition above all else. Some will see your presence as a violation of our laws. Others may view it as a blessing. Either way, the decision will not be easy for either of us. Unquote. Jiho felt a lump form in his throat. He didn't like the sound of that. Facing judgment from a group of alien elders didn't exactly fill him with confidence. But what choice did he have? He couldn't run forever, and he certainly couldn't undo what had already been done. All right, he said reluctantly. Let's go. The alien nodded, seemingly satisfied with his response. She gestured for him to follow her, and together they moved deeper into the shifting, otherworldly corridors of the ship. As they walked, Jiho couldn't help but marvel at the strange beauty surrounding him. The walls pulsed with light, and the air carried a faint, musical hum that seemed to resonate in his bones. It was unlike anything he had ever experienced. Eventually, they arrived at a large, circular chamber. The room was filled with towering figures, each one radiating an aura of power and authority. Their eyes glowed with the same molten gold as the alien queen's, and their wings shimmered like rainbows in the light. Jiho swallowed hard as they turned their gaze toward him, their expressions unreadable. This is him? One of them asked, its voice deep and resonant. Yes, the alien queen replied. He is the one who tended my wound. Murmurs spread throughout the chamber, and Jiho felt his nerves spike. He didn't understand their language, but he could guess what they were saying. Whatever they decided, he knew it wouldn't be simple. The alien queen stepped forward, placing herself between Jiho and the council. He acted without malice, she said firmly. His intentions were pure. For that, I believe he deserves mercy. One of the elders stepped forward, its wings spreading wide. Mercy is not ours to give, it said. The law must be upheld. You know this. The alien queen clenched her fists, her composure wavering for the first time. The elder regarded her silently for a moment before nodding. Very well. Let the trial begin. Jiho's heart sank. He had no idea what was going to happen next. But one thing was certain. His life would never be the same. The chamber was silent, save for the faint hum of energy that seemed to pulse through the walls. Jiho stood frozen, his heart pounding in his chest as the alien elders stared at him with their glowing golden eyes. He felt small, insignificant in the presence of these towering figures, their shimmering wings casting soft shadows across the floor. The weight of their judgment pressed down on him, and he couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't going to end well. The alien queen, Eun-kyung, stood beside him, her posture rigid but determined. She had placed herself between Jiho and the council, acting as both a shield and an advocate. Her loyalty surprised him. After everything that had happened, she still chose to protect him, even though his actions had put her in this difficult position. Jiho didn't know whether to feel grateful or guilty. One of the elders stepped forward, its voice echoing through the chamber like rolling thunder. You claim this human acted without malice, it said, addressing Eun-kyung. Yet his touch violated our most sacred law. How do you justify such behavior? Eun-kyung lifted her chin, meeting the elder's gaze without flinching. He did not know our customs, she replied firmly. He saved my life when no one else would. His ignorance does not diminish his bravery or his worth. Murmurs rippled through the room, and Jiho could feel the tension growing. Some of the elders nodded approvingly, while others exchanged skeptical glances. It was clear that opinions were divided, and Jiho knew that whatever decision they made would depend on more than just facts. Emotions, traditions, and politics all played a role here. Another elder spoke up, its tone sharp and accusatory. Our laws exist to maintain order. If we allow exceptions, what message does that send to our people? Shall we discard centuries of tradition because one human acted out of foolishness? Jiho winced at the word foolishness. He wanted to defend himself, to explain that he hadn't meant any harm, but he knew better than to interrupt. This wasn't his world, and these weren't his rules. Speaking out of turn would only make things worse. Yoon Kyung, however, wasn't afraid to challenge them. Foolishness or not, his actions have consequences, she said. The bond has been forged. To ignore it now would be to deny fate itself. The room fell silent again, and Jiho felt every eye turn toward him. He shifted uncomfortably under their scrutiny, wishing he could disappear. What did they expect him to say? That he was sorry? That he wanted nothing to do with their traditions? Neither option seemed likely to help. Finally, the first elder who had spoken raised a hand, silencing the murmurs. Enough, it said. We must decide what is to be done. The law is clear. Anyone who touches the sacred mark without permission must face judgment. However, the circumstances surrounding this case are unusual. Jiho held his breath, waiting for the verdict. After a long pause, the elder continued, "We will not cast judgment lightly. The human will remain under our custody until further deliberation. During this time, he will undergo testing to determine his intentions and capabilities." Testing? Jiho blurted out before he could stop himself. What kind of testing? Jiho. What kind of testing? All eyes turned to him once again, and he immediately regretted speaking. He braced himself for anger or reprimand, but instead, the elder simply regarded him with a neutral expression. "To understand your character," it explained. "Your actions thus far suggest courage and compassion, but those qualities alone are insufficient. You must prove yourself worthy of standing beside our queen." Beside him, Yoon Kyung tensed slightly. Though her expression remained calm, Jiho glanced at her, searching for reassurance, but she avoided his gaze. Whatever was coming next, she clearly didn't want to sugarcoat it. The elder gestured to two guards standing nearby. "Take him to the trial grounds," it commanded. "Begin the tests immediately." Before Jiho could protest, the guards moved toward him, their movements swift and deliberate. They didn't grab him roughly, but there was no mistaking the authority in their stance. One of them placed a hand on his shoulder, guiding him toward the exit. Jiho hesitated, looking back at Yoon Kyung one last time. She finally met his gaze, her golden eyes filled with a mixture of determination and apology. "Trust me," she whispered, so softly that only he could hear. "I will not let them harm you." Jiho nodded, though he wasn't sure if he believed her. Trust was a luxury he couldn't afford right now. All he could do was follow the guards and hope for the best. The trial grounds were unlike anything Jiho had ever seen. The area was vast, stretching as far as the eye could see, with jagged cliffs rising on either side. The ground shimmered with veins of glowing crystal, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. In the center of the space stood a series of platforms, each one connected by narrow bridges that swayed gently in the breeze. "This is where you will be tested," one of the guards explained, gesturing to the platforms. "Each one represents a different challenge. You must complete them all to prove your worth." Jiho swallowed hard, staring at the platforms nervously. They looked unstable, almost fragile, and the thought of crossing them made his stomach churn. But he didn't have much choice. Refusing to participate wouldn't win him any favors. The first platform loomed ahead, and Jiho approached it cautiously. As he stepped onto the surface, he realized it wasn't solid. It was made of some kind of translucent material that rippled beneath his feet like water. He froze, unsure of how to proceed. "Move forward," the guard instructed. "Do not hesitate." Taking a deep breath, Jiho forced himself to take another step. The platform held steady, though it wobbled slightly with each movement. Slowly, carefully, he made his way across, keeping his focus on the next bridge. When he reached it, he exhaled in relief, but his relief was short-lived. The second platform was surrounded by floating orbs of light, each one emitting a low hum. As Ji-ho stepped closer, the orbs began to move, swirling around him in a dizzying pattern. He instinctively raised his arms to shield himself, but the orbs didn't attack. Instead, they formed shapes, symbols that hovered in the air before dissolving into thin air. "What is this?" Ji-ho asked, turning to the guards. "They are memories," one of them replied. "From your past." Ji-ho frowned, confused. Memories? Before he could ask more, the symbols began to change, forming images that flickered like holograms. He saw flashes of his childhood playing in the fields with his siblings, arguing with his parents, struggling to fix a broken engine. Then the images shifted, showing moments from his recent past: the loneliness of scavenging on the moon, the fear of finding Yoon Kyung injured, the uncertainty of standing before the council. Ji-ho felt exposed, vulnerable, as if the orbs were peeling away layers of his soul. When the memories finally faded, Ji-ho stumbled forward, exhausted. The emotional toll was heavier than he expected, and he barely had the strength to continue. But he knew giving up wasn't an option. Not if he wanted to survive. The third platform awaited him, and as he approached, he noticed something strange. The air around it shimmered, distorting his vision. When he stepped onto the surface, he realized why. It wasn't a physical platform at all. It was a projection, a test of his resolve. "You must cross without fear," the guard said. "Doubt will cause you to fall." Ji-ho hesitated, staring at the shifting surface. It was impossible to tell where the edge ended and the void began. One wrong step, and he would plummet into nothingness. But he reminded himself of Eun Kyung's words, "Trust me." She had believed in him, even when he doubted himself. Maybe it was time to believe in her and in himself. With trembling legs, Ji-ho took the first step. The platform wavered beneath him, threatening to collapse, but he kept moving, focusing on the path ahead. Each step required immense concentration, but slowly, surely, he made it across. By the time he reached the final platform, Ji-ho was physically and emotionally drained. But he wasn't finished yet. The last challenge awaited him, and as he stepped onto the surface, he felt a wave of cold wash over him. Standing before him was a mirror, not an ordinary mirror, but one that reflected not his appearance, but his inner self. His reflection stared back at him, its expression unreadable. For a moment, Ji-ho felt a pang of doubt. Was he strong enough? Brave enough? Worthy enough? Then, unexpectedly, the reflection smiled. It wasn't mocking or cruel, it was warm, encouraging. Ji-ho realized the mirror wasn't judging him. It was showing him his potential. His flaws, yes, but also his strengths. And for the first time, he understood what Yoon Kyung saw in him. "I can do this," he whispered, more to himself than anyone else. The mirror shattered, and the trial grounds dissolved around him. Ji-ho found himself back in the chamber, surrounded by the elders. Their expressions were unreadable, but Yoon Kyung's face lit up with quiet pride. "You have passed," one of the elders announced. "But your journey is far from over." Ji-ho nodded, his resolve stronger than ever. Whatever came next, he was ready. Ji-ho stood in the center of the chamber, his chest rising and falling with each labored breath. The elders' announcement still hung in the air, heavy with meaning. He had passed their tests, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed down on him like a mountain. This wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about proving himself not only to them but also to himself. Yoon Kyung stepped forward, her wings folding neatly behind her as she approached him. Her golden eyes shimmered with pride, though there was a hint of sadness lingering beneath the surface. Ji-ho could see it now, the burden she carried as queen, the expectations placed upon her by her people. She had risked much to stand beside him, and he knew that whatever happened next would affect them both. The human has proven his worth, one of the elders declared, breaking the silence. But this does not absolve him or you of your actions. The bond remains, and it must be acknowledged. Yunkyung nodded solemnly. I understand, the elder continued, its voice resonating through the chamber. Tradition demands that such bonds be honored. However, given the unique nature of this situation, we will grant you both a choice. Jiho blinked, surprised. A choice? That was something he hadn't expected. Up until now, everything had been dictated by laws and customs far beyond his control. But a choice meant freedom and responsibility. What kind of choice? Jiho asked cautiously, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. The elder turned its gaze toward him, its glowing eyes piercing. You may sever the bond, returning to your world as if none of this ever happened. Or you may embrace it, becoming consort to our queen and taking your place among us. Jiho's heart skipped a beat. The words hit him like a tidal wave, washing away any sense of calm he had managed to gather. Sever the bond? Leave Eunkyung and return to his old life? It sounded simple enough. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that easy. These past days, these trials had changed him. They had shown him parts of himself he hadn't known existed. Strength, courage, compassion. And somewhere along the way, he had started to care about Eunkyung not just as a queen, but as a person. On the other hand, staying meant stepping into a world he barely understood. A world where tradition outweighed individuality, where every action was scrutinized, and where failure wasn't an option. Could he truly belong here? Beside him, Eunkyung spoke softly. The decision is yours, Jiho. Whatever you choose, I will respect it. Her words caught him off guard. Despite everything, she was giving him the freedom to walk away. It wasn't what he had expected from someone who valued duty above all else. Her willingness to let him go even after all they had been through spoke volumes about the kind of person she was. Jiho looked at her. Really looked at her. For the first time since their journey began. Her silvery skin glowed faintly in the dim light, and her wings shimmered like rainbows under the sun. She was beautiful. Yes. But it wasn't just her appearance that drew him in. It was her strength, her determination, her quiet vulnerability. She had fought for him, protected him, believed in him when no one else would. How could he turn his back on that? I can't leave, he said finally, his voice firm. Not after everything we've been through. Not when I know I can help. Eunkyung's eyes widened slightly, surprise flickering across her face. Are you sure? She asked, her tone soft but serious. This life isn't easy. My people are proud, and many will question your presence here. I'm sure, Jiho replied, nodding. For a moment, Eunkyung simply stared at him, her expression unreadable. Then, slowly, a smile spread across her lips. It was small, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to make Jiho's heart swell with hope. Very well, the elder said, interrupting the moment. The bond will be formalized. From this day forward, you are consort to our queen. The chamber erupted into murmurs, some approving, others disapproving. Jiho ignored them, focusing instead on Eunkyung. She reached out and took his hand, her touch warm and reassuring. For the first time since they met, Jiho felt a sense of belonging, a connection that transcended worlds, species, and traditions. Days passed, and Jiho found himself adapting to his new role faster than he had anticipated. The alien palace was vast and intricate, filled with winding corridors, shimmering gardens, and towering spires that seemed to touch the sky. Every corner held wonders unlike anything he had ever seen, and every day brought new challenges and new opportunities. At first, the other aliens were wary of him. Their gazes followed him wherever he went, filled with curiosity, skepticism, and sometimes outright hostility, but Jiho refused to let their judgment weigh him down. Instead, he focused on learning their ways, earning their trust bit by bit. He spent hours studying their language, their history, their customs. He listened to their stories, shared his own, and slowly began to bridge the gap between their worlds. Yoon Kyung was always by his side, guiding him, supporting him. Together, they faced the challenges that came with blending two vastly different cultures. There were moments of tension, disagreements, and even outright resistance. But through it all, they remained united, working together to forge a path forward. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the horizon, Jiho and Yoon Kyung stood on a balcony overlooking the city. The lights below twinkled like stars, casting a soft glow over the landscape. For a moment, neither of them spoke, content to simply enjoy the view. "You've done well," Yoon Kyung said finally, breaking the silence. "Better than I expected." Jiho chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck awkwardly. "I'm still figuring things out. Some days, I feel like I don't belong here at all." "You do," she said firmly, turning to face him. "Belonging isn't about being perfect. It's about trying. About caring. You've done both." Jiho smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. "Thanks. That means a lot." They stood there for a while longer, watching the moons rise higher into the sky. As Jiho gazed out at the city below, he realized something important. He wasn't just surviving here. He was thriving. This strange, alien world had become his home, and Yoon Kyung, she had become his family. Months later, Jiho stood once again in the council chamber, this time surrounded not by judgmental stares but by nods of approval. The elders watched him with newfound respect, their expressions softened by time and understanding. Even those who had initially opposed his presence now acknowledged the positive changes he had brought to their society. "Your efforts have united us," one of the elders said, addressing both Jiho and Yoon Kyung. "Through your bond, you have bridged gaps we thought unbridgeable. For that, we are grateful." Jiho glanced at Yoon Kyung, who smiled warmly at him. "We couldn't have done it alone," she said. "It took all of us." As the ceremony concluded, Jiho reflected on how far they had come. What had started as a chance encounter on a desolate moon had blossomed into something extraordinary. He had faced trials, overcome doubts, and discovered strengths he never knew he possessed. Most importantly, he had found a purpose, a reason to keep moving forward. And as he stood beside Yoon Kyung, holding her hand tightly in his, Jiho knew one thing for certain. No matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. Because in the end, it wasn't about where you came from or what you looked like. It was about the connections you made, the lives you touched, and the legacy you left behind.